Hello, everyone. I hope everybody had a great weekend. A lot of people struggle with our assignment on alienation that we had, where I asked you to think about a job that you had that was not good. And what I want you to do is to review this concept a little bit more, because a lot of folks seem to struggle with it. And it's sometimes a difficult concept to get started with. We explored the concept of alienation, as defined by the German social thinker Karl Marx. I asked you if you'd ever worked at a job you hated, and most people did an excellent job of answering that question. But let's clarify a little bit about what alienation is, so that when we do our rewrites for our assignment, you'll have an opportunity to really shine. Karl Marx answered the question 2 centuries ago about your job. While there are many debates about the breadth of his ideas, we can all get behind the idea that sometimes work is terrible. So how did Marx? He developed this concept of alienation. He defined alienation as having 4 characteristics. First, it's a separation of workers from what he called the means of production. Have you ever owned your own business? Perhaps when you were young, you mowed lawns for money? Well, that's sort of being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur owns their own means of production. Do you own what you use to make money, or do you work for someone else? That's what a worker who's alienated from the means of production. If you own your own lawnmower, for example, you're going to want to work as much as possible. But if you work for a big company where you only got a slice of what people were paying for you to work, you might not be tempted to work so hard. Second, alienation, according to Marx, is a separation of workers from the product of their labor. For example, can you afford to buy what you make? If you worked in a luxury car factory, could you afford to buy the car? Marx is keenly aware of this. Third, workers are alienated or separated from what Marx calls their own species being. Species being is kind of a fancy word that Marx came up with, our own creative essence. Think about something that you enjoy, like a hobby, or perhaps playing music or practicing a guitar or working on cars. Or say, from our first example, you're mowing lawns and you're enjoying a direct profit. You're invested in that work. You gain satisfaction in addition to money from the work. You feel as the work defines you in a positive way. For Marx, the way that the early capitalist work was organized in the mid-19th century took this potential away from people. In other words, people couldn't enjoy their work. Their work was split up. Their work was controlled by someone else. And so people were removed from the creative essence of their work. And finally, Marx said that because of this arrangement, when people worked not for themselves, but for the people who owned factories, and this is the case in the mid-19th century, that people were alienated from the rest of humanity. Think of a bad work environment where you're working at a job you don't like. You watch the clock. You may or may not get along with your other coworkers. Workers in this kind of environment tend not to get along with each other. So I hope this clarified some of the questions that you might have had about alienation. We'll have a chance to craft our papers some more for this particular unit. Have a great week, and I look forward to reading further what you have to say.